we can't do anything without having really good energy, but managing it can be really a challenge. So Deborah is an executive coach, and she has an organization called Spark 360, and she's been working with executives on energy usage and conservation. So I'd call her a conservationist, but of the human energy type rather than the physical energy type. And she's based in New York, and as some of you are located on the East Coast. So she's also a New Yorker slash East Coaster. And but we're excited to have her with us. And so as you have questions, put them in the chat, please. And we'll get to as many as possible. But she's got a lot of great content to share, and she's been studying this for a very long time. So I'm excited to have her share with you and excited to hear her talk. And she was introduced to us by Deborah Nash, who is with us here today. And I love it when our former speakers come out and play with us on Friday morning. So it's good to see you, Deborah, and Deborah. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, Deborah Goldstein.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Christy, for the introduction and also for inviting me to be here. And Deborah Nash, thank you. I know that there are a lot of West Coasters here, so I'll thank Deborah and y'all for getting up a little bit early and being on a call early. Deborah Nash, it's really wonderful to see you always. And I love the power of connection. Like, the power of connection in itself is an energizer, right? So, a couple of quick ways of working wows before we dive in. The first is science references. I'll be sharing a lot of research findings today throughout the session. And there's a full list of sources and citations on the last slide of the deck that I'll be sharing. Oh, hi. Oh, wow. Don't get to see as many people now, but that's okay. So on the last slide of the deck that I'll be sharing soon, and you will receive tomorrow, will be all the citations, all of the sources linked, so you can research anything that you would like. The credibility is there. I just don't want to go into the names and the titles and the affiliations, because I find that with all of that, it clogs up our mental energy. Second, when I asked Christy about this community, she said they like lots of information and fast paced. So get ready, buckle up, and I invite you into an active conversation, not a lecture. I'm going to be talking, but I invite you to talk back with your fingers. I'll be asking a lot of questions for the chat box. So get your fingers ready for emojis or numbers or one-word drops into the chat box to keep this energized. And that's your microphone for the first part of the session. And as Christy had mentioned, please ask any questions or put any comments in the chat box, and we will field them at the end of our session. So I think that just before we get into energy, a minute about me and the context underneath the bio. So I've been working with professionals on energy and vitality since 2013, long before burnout became a headline. It started as a personal fascination with energy management, specifically understanding it, using it to understand and mitigate and eventually eliminate 25 years of panic attacks. And this became a framework for managing stress and overwhelm. And that framework became Spark 360, which is a program that helps professionals understand their human operating system. Because, friends, we did not come with an owner's manual. So today you'll get a taste of the foundation, the spine of Spark 360, which is your 5 personal energy sources or energy tanks. And by the end of our time together, you'll know exactly which one of your tanks has been running low without you even knowing it. But I'd like to start with a question, not a theoretical question, but a real question. And I'm going to start sharing my screen now. Can you give me a thumbs up if you can see? Thank you. Okay. Real question. Think about the last high stakes moment you walked into: an interview, a performance review, a negotiation, a conversation you've been dreading for weeks. You prepared what you were going to say. You probably practiced it. You may have rehearsed the hard questions. You prepared the content. But did you prepare who was going to show up? Because here's what neuroscience and decades of coaching tells us. The content is rarely what fails us. It's the state we are in when we deliver it. The instrument matters as much as the material. So, first question for the chat box. What is a high stakes encounter you're navigating right now, or one that's coming up? Just a word or two, just to get a sense. An interview, a board meeting, hard conversations. Okay, lots of interviews and job searches, informations, conversations with VC. Excellent, excellent, excellent. So we all are kind of in the same bucket. We all have courageous conversations to stretch us out of our comfort zones coming up. And today is about not more content, but tuning our instruments. And let me show you why your instrument matters more than you may think. But first, let me see. Please slide. There we go. I want to ask you about how you think about energy. Because most of us, if we think about it, treat it like a bank account. You wake up with a certain amount of energy, you spend it across the day, and by 4 o'clock, you're running on fumes. So you manage it. Time blocks, calendar hygiene, sleep tracking, maybe a meditation app. These tools are essential. Do not get me wrong. And they're only half the story because they are built on a flawed foundation. They assume we have one tank. What if you had five? What if the real question is not how much energy you have, but where it's leaking and why? So, Jim Loehr and Tony Schwartz published research in the Harvard Business Review back in 2001 that reframed performance, not as time management, but as energy management across physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual dimensions. At Driven, we built on that foundation and added a fifth dimension, social. Now, I've been working with this framework since 2013. That's over a decade of working with and coaching leaders, professionals, job seekers, and watching what happens when people learn to tend their energy instead of simply rationing it. And let me tell you, it changes things. Managing your calendar does not refill a depleted emotional tank. It does not restore mental clarity after 5 back-to-back Zoom calls. These tools are essential, and they're also myopic. They optimize within the wrong model. So may I please introduce to you your human operating system? Think of it the way you think of your computer's operating system. Right now, your computer has applications running in the background that you're not even conscious of opening. And some of them are using processing power you need for the task in front of you. Your human operating system works the same way. 5 energy sources always running simultaneously: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, social. They are not independent. They feed each other, or friends, they starve each other. And the command center running all of it is your brain, specifically 2 structures that determine moment to moment where you're performing at your best or simply surviving. So before we dive into our 5 energy tanks, which is the meat of our conversation today, here's a quick way to think about your brain. And reading left to right on your screen, the amygdala is your brain's threat scanner. It's fast, it's automatic, and it operates below conscious awareness. It's always on, always reading the room, always asking, am I safe? When it detects threat, real or perceived, it sends a chemical signal that puts the body on alert. The prefrontal cortex, your brain's strategy center, is where your highest level thinking happens. Planning, nuance, creativity, connection. But here's the catch. When the amygdala fires a threat signal, it literally impairs access to the prefrontal cortex. That's the part that we need the most, and that's what goes offline. You see, the body prioritizes survival over strategy. And when your energy tanks are running low, the body registers depletion as a form of physiological stress. And stress, as research shows up, impairs access to the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain we need to perform. That connection between depletion, energy depletion, and strategy, depletion is not just fatigue, it is a threat signal that narrows your thinking. So before we map each of the five tanks, I want to give you something to measure against. And we're going to take about 90 seconds, not because we have time to spare, because time is finite, but energy doesn't have to be when we are intentional. So before we take these 90 seconds, I'd like to ask you on a scale of 1 to 5, how present are you right now? One means like you're still with last night's closing of business. You're still getting the kids off to school. 5 means fully here, being here fully. Oh, that's very nice to see. Okay. Oh, a six. We got a couple of sixes. Okay. We definitely have some overachievers in this group. Excellent. Hold that number as well. We're going to come back to it. But now I'd like to take 90 seconds together to breathe. Now, you can do this with your camera on or camera off, feet flat on the floor if you can. And as you're settling in, I'd like to tell you that I published this practice in Forbes in 2020, and I've been using it with leaders and executives for years. It takes less than a minute. And after I walk you through the 3 breath meditation, I'm going to ask you one question. And your own answer, your very own, will tell you more about your operating system than anything that I could say today. But before we begin, a quick note on breathing. We want belly breathing, not chest breathing. So as you start to breathe, in and you inhale into your nose, let your belly expand first, not your shoulders, but think about your belly expanding. If you want, put your hand with your thumb on your belly button, the rest of your fingers underneath, and feel your belly expand as you inhale and your belly contract as you exhale. Belly expand as you inhale. Belly contract as you exhale. As you're inhaling, think of filling up from the bottom. And as you exhale, imagine squeezing the last bit of toothpaste out of the tube at the end of the release of your air. This activates the diaphragm, which is what triggers the vagal nervous response we want. So let's get the rhythm of that for a minute, and then we'll go into the 3 breath meditation. So inhaling in through your nose with your belly expanding, exhaling through your mouth as your belly contracts. Pretend you're blowing out birthday candles. And now with your next inhale, in through the nose, slowly feel the cool air at the bridge of your nostrils, belly expanding. Hold, 2, 3, and out through your mouth. Let it go. Imagine everything you were carrying from your morning and yesterday leave with the breath. Now inhale again in the same way. And as you hold, just notice what emotion is present right now. Anxiety, relief, impatience, curiosity. Name it silently, no judgment. It's just data. And release it with the exhale. And then one more time, 3rd breath in through your nose. And as you hold it, ask one question of yourself. What is the most important thing for me to focus on right now? Not most urgent, the most important. And as you exhale, I would like to welcome you to the present. 3 breaths is all it takes to come to the present. So I would love to know in the chat box if you would write what shifted in a word or in a sentence. What shifted after or during those 3 breaths, or as you stop to breathe for a moment? Calmer, focus, relax, less stress, more relaxed, blank mind. Excellent, excellent. So there are body sensations with the calmer. There's emotional, that's the physical energy tank. Emotional energy is less anxious, stress, shoulders relaxed, physical energy, grounded spiritual energy, blank mind, open, social energy, mental energy. So this is very cool. Same as all above. Well done, Russell. So if you
Thank you,
notice what
Deborah.
Oh, if you notice what just happened, many of you named something different. Some of you felt your body, some felt your focus, some felt a settled sense. You just touched on your entire operating system community in a community in 90 seconds. And if you're intentional, this can take as little as 10 seconds before you enter a Zoom call. Folks, this is not a trick. This is neuroscience and is the foundation of everything we're about to explore. So let me take a moment to tell you what just happened with each breath. Breath number 1 was physical. Slow diaphragmatic breathing activates the vagus nerve, shifting your automatic nervous system from sympathetic, the threat and cortisol state, towards parasympathetic. The amygdala received the safe signal. Cortisol began to stand down. Breath number 2, emotional energy was affected there. Unacknowledged emotions do not disappear. They drive behavior from below conscious awareness. I want to say this again because our emotional energy tank is the silent but deadly one. Unacknowledged emotions do not disappear. They drive behavior from below conscious awareness. And just by labeling an emotion, the intensity mitigates just by labeling it. So when we are in an unacknowledged emotional state, cortisol rises and our capacity for creative thinking and genuine connection contracts. Naming the emotion, even silently, is the first act of regulation. I love the phrase, name it to tame it. Breath number 3, mental and spiritual energy was tapped into. You set an intention and arrived in the present moment. Attention follows intention. So that number you gave me before, I'm curious if you'd like to rescore it with your presence right now, or if you want to give a thumbs up if it's increased. I'm very curious about what has changed, what has shifted with those 3 breaths. A lot of thumbs up. I'm really glad that I'm interpreting that as energy, like you are more focused, more able to be present. Excellent. Oh, I love the thumbs up. It's just after 4th of July and we've got more fireworks. Thank you, friends. Now let's map each tank, starting with the one that people most underestimate, and that is our physical energy tank. You cannot think clearly from a body that's running on fumes. And here's what surprises most high performance performers. Energy is not enough. That's not me being provocative. I'm sorry, I misspoke. It's exercise is not enough. And this is data. Exercise is not enough for you to think clearly, although a lot of us are addicted to our exercise routines, and I think it's a good addiction to have. But thank you. Keith Diaz and his team from Columbia University Medical Center studied more than 20,000 people. And they found that if you take 5 minutes of gentle movement every 30 minutes, not a workout, 5 minutes of a walk or a stretch, You reduce fatigue by approximately 28%, blood sugar by nearly 50%, and blood pressure by 5 points. As I mentioned at the top, all of the research and all of the links are in the last page of this slide deck. So you'll be able to look into that research, which is fascinating. But here's the piece that changes the conversation. Those benefits do not transfer from a morning workout. If you exercise at 6 a.m. and then sit for 8 hours, you face the same metabolic consequences as someone who didn't move at all. The hidden drain on the physical tank is not fitness, it is sustained stillness. So, for anyone in a job search, the isolation from searching at home, the back-to-back applications sessions, the recruiter calls, that creates the exact same pattern. You're not moving. Your physical tank is draining while you sit at the keyboard and you're walking into interviews already depleted. So I want to tell you a inspirational story. During COVID, I worked with a partner at a Big Four accounting firm who was leading a team of 160 people. And she was watching her people dissolve in the back-to-back Zoom fatigue. So she did something risky and playful and really strategic. She shortened all of the meetings that they had internally to 25 and 50 minutes instead of the 30 and 60. And she started the meetings 5 or 10 minutes after the hour or the half hour. Then she invited her team to a physical challenge to use those windows of time. She chose to do 10 push-ups between every meeting. Others stretched, walked to the kitchen, refilled their water, stared out the window. And over time, her arms became buff. She had guns, and her team's mental clarity and emotional steadiness improved measurably too. The physical energy tank does not work in isolation. It also affects all the other tanks, and we'll see why this is important in a moment. But right now, curious in the chat box, how many intentional movement breaks outside of exercise did you take yesterday? I'm curious about how many you took. And Michael, it's a zero of yesterday, but there's so much opportunity going forward now that you've recognized that. Mary took 11. That's amazing. I'm so glad that some of you are recognizing how many. This looks wonderful. And hopefully you'll be able to give yourself a silent rock on because you're recognizing how healthy you are for yourself. So I want to share what happens in the spaces between those breaks or when there are none, what is happening. And that is directly linked to our mental energy tank. So your best thinking may still be in your last meeting. And I know that that's proverbial because most of you have not had a meeting yet today, but so often we arrive in meetings with our brains still in the last meeting. And Sophie Leroy at the University of Washington calls this attention residue. When you leave a meeting or a task without resolution, without a clear close, part of your prefrontal cortex stays there, still processing, while the rest of you tries to show up fully in the next conversation. Every open browser tab on your screen right now is a claim on your mental tank. Your brain is not designed for infinite code switching, better known as multitasking. But here's what makes this visceral. This is related to the slide that you see on the screen. Microsoft research put EEG caps on people and measured brain activity across 4 back-to-back meetings. Look at the top row. That is with no breaks. Notice the beta wave activity and all the red, which indicates high stress. Beta wave activity is a measurable marker of stress, and we see it building cumulatively across every meeting. By meeting 4, the brain is showing significant elevated stress signatures, even when the content of the meeting was completely neutral. And here's a detail that stops people cold. And I bet this resonates with you. Even the anticipation of your next call caused a stress spike during the transition period. Microsoft's own research confirmed it. You're coming to the end of a meeting. Knowing another one is coming, the brain begins bracing before it has even started. Could you give me a thumbs up if that resonates, folks? Yeah, it's making my hands clench. So if you look at the bottom row, this indicates 10 minutes before, 10-minute break between sessions. Beta activity resets flat across all four meetings. The brain on break literally looks different. Phones transitions are not wasted time. They are mental hygiene. They are the space where your prefrontal cortex gets to close one loop before it opens another. Now, in Spark 360, this program that I've mentioned, we use a technique drawn from the Pomodoro method. Start with a specific intention, set a timer, work for 20 minutes with that single defined intention and outcome, reflect, and then open the next task and take a 5-minute break. That's a half an hour of focused, nutrient dense work. That's what mental hygiene looks like in practice. Small structural changes that have a measurable neurological impact. Transitions are where you reclaim your mental energy tank. So I'm curious if you would put into the chat box, how many browser tabs do you have open right now? And that could be actual browser tabs or mental browser tabs. Okay, there is a quite a range of answers here. So I will continue by suggesting that we're going to the tank now that most people carry the heaviest load in and acknowledge the least because we pretend that we can manage our emotions where, as Vincent van Gogh says, let's not forget that the little emotions are the captains of our lives and we obey them without even realizing it. And yet, I will repeat that because it's so profound. Let's not forget that the little emotions are the captains of our lives, and we obey them without even realizing it. So, you cannot logic your way out of an emotional state. And here's what the neuroscience tells us. The amygdala processes emotional threat before the prefrontal cortex has the chance to weigh in. Amygdala is the fast system. Prefrontal cortex is the slow system. This is not a character flaw. It's that you're hardwired to do exactly what it was designed for. Assess safety rapidly below conscious awareness. Now, research at UCLA demonstrated that social rejection activates the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex, the same neural region activated by physical pain. So in job search, every no lands in the body before it reaches the brain. The cumulative emotional toll is physiologically real. When cortisol dominates, what happens when that threat signal fires? The prefrontal cortex function is impaired. Attention narrows, creative range contracts, and our capacity for trust and genuine connection decreases. When oxytocin is present, when we feel safe, seen, and connected, trust expands and real co-creation becomes possible. Your emotional state does not just affect you, it is the weather in the room. So the mood elevator, which you see on the screen, is one of my favorite tools to use. It was developed by Larry Sen, and it maps the neurochemical states from grateful and hopeful at the top, which produces oxytocin. Gratitude is a wonderful producer of oxytocin, to defensive, anxious, and depleted at the bottom, which produces cortisol. Now, may I direct your attention to the middle, that gray zone? That has one word in it, curious. And here's why. Curiosity is the pivot state. When you can walk into a high stakes encounter genuinely curious, curious about the other person, curious about the outcome, curious about what you might learn, you're in an emotionally grounded state. Your cortisol is not spiking. Your prefrontal cortex is accessible, and you're sending co-regulation signals to other people before you've said a word. The mood elevator is not just a map of where you are, it's a guide to where you want to aim. So I wanted to share a personal story or a personal pattern that I've recognized about myself, about emotions and the long-term effects. When I build towards something that matters, like a launch, a courageous conversation, a presentation, along the way, of course, life happens and things accumulate. A proposal that comes back with a not now, a technology glitch galore, the partnership that doesn't land. I absorb them. I stay professional. I keep on going. And then the big thing happens and it goes well. And then something small days later breaks me open completely. A tone in an email, a minor misunderstanding. And I think, why is this getting to me? This is nothing. I break down over nothing. That is not a weakness. It has a name. Delayed stress response. The body suppresses its reactivity to meet the demand and releases it when the threat has passed. So we brace and then we release. The tank was quietly emptying the whole time. The body just waited for the all clear before presenting the bill. The emotional tank does not wait for a convenient moment, and does not stay invisible forever. So I would love for you to write in the chat box, where are you on the mood elevator now? I love that there's so many curiouses. That is a wonderful state to maintain. Grateful and curious. Anxious is recognizing anxious is one step towards being able to get curious about why anxious. Gray and orange. Okay. Hopeful, trusting, grateful. We always have the opportunity to get curious. So let's move on to the fourth energy tank, which is perhaps the quietest and the one that most drives whether the other three feel meaningful. And that is our spiritual energy tank. And when I say spiritual energy, I want to be precise about what I mean and what I do not mean. This has nothing to do with religion or belief systems. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But spiritual energy, as I use it, is the capacity to act from meaning rather than momentum. Meaning rather than momentum. It's the connection between what you do every day and why it matters. It's your internal compass. When it's calibrated, high stakes encounters feel manageable, even when they're hard. You know what you're anchoring to. When it is not calibrated, you're making decisions from urgency rather than intention. And you may not even notice the difference until the achievement arrives and it feels hollow. Research on hedonic adaptation tells us that the emotional lift from any achievement fades faster than we predict. It's called the honeymoon period, which is a little bit easier to say than hedonic adaptation. But the promotion, the offer, the win, the lift comes and then it fades. Without a values anchor underneath, high performers may find themselves perpetually chasing the next thing, not because they're ambitious, but because they've lost the thread between what they do and why it matters. For anyone here right now that's in a job search, when your values are not clear, any offer could feel like the right one, or none of them do. The compass is the first thing that you can calibrate, not necessarily the resume. So in Spark 360, we call this your personal terroir, the unique conditions that shape you and give you presence, its distinct character. No two people have the same terroir. No two people have the same values anchor. No one else brings what you bring when you walk into that room fully grounded in your values. So I want to share a quick story about a client I worked with in the wine business. He had been promoted again and again, each step the logical next move, each title more prestigious, each role with a financial bump to match. He was objectively, on paper, succeeding, but in actuality, he was exhausted. Until one day he realized The work that had lit him up to allow him to live a lit up life, that was all quietly removed. He was now managing problems, navigating internal politics, dealing with operational complexity of a larger portfolio. What he loved most, developing deep relationships with his clients, being in the room with them, understanding their challenges and their vision, he no longer did that. Someone else did that. He never stopped to consult his internal compass. Kyle was moving so fast, and the moves had been so logical that no one, including him, had thought to ask the question, is this where you want to go? No, but he didn't tap into his internal values, intrinsic values. He was working from extrinsic values, extrinsic expectations. The spiritual tank is not about whether your work looks impressive. It's about whether you feel like it's yours. So, word in the chat box, please. What is the value you most want others to feel when they interact with you? So, what's one value you most want other people to feel coming from you when they interact with you in an interview, in a negotiation, in a courageous conversation? Authenticity, authentic, trusting, inspired, sincere, yeah, transparent. The words that you're putting into the chat box, think of those words as your compass. And it's the most powerful thing that you can bring into any high stakes room. So now, drum roll, please, the fifth energy tank. The one most high performers underestimate because they pride themselves on not needing it. Humans are wired for co-regulation. Isolation is a performance tax. Social baseline theory out of the University of Virginia demonstrated something remarkable. When people anticipate a threat while holding a stranger's hand, their neural threat response decreases. When they hold the hand of someone they love, it decreases even further. The brain does not experience social connection as a preference. It experiences isolation as an additional load. When the brain can't share cognitive and emotional burden with others, it works harder and depletes faster. Isolation is not a neutral condition, it's a metabolic cost. For any of you conducting a job search alone, no peer community, no accountability, no one to process rejection with, that isolation is showing up with you in your interviews as low energy and disconnection, even when you can't name the cause. And here's the professional implication. When you walk into a high stakes encounter depleted and underregulated, you do not just underperform. Through what research call mirror neurons, the neural mechanism by which we unconsciously read and replicate the other states of those around us, your state activates the threat response in another person. Cortisol rises in the room before you've even said a word. You become a drain before you've introduced yourself. The 3 breath meditation practice you did 20 minutes ago, that's the switch. Regulated, present, intentional. You walk in as a fountain, someone whose state makes the room safer, not harder. When I walk into any new room, I plaster a smile on my face no matter how I'm feeling because a smile tells my neurochemistry that I'm safe and it triggers a response in another person, emotional contagion that they want to smile too. So you don't just need a network, you need a community. Your nervous system knows the difference. So leverage the community that you have. So now I want to invite you to think of someone who reliably makes you feel better just by being in the room with them. And drop like a smiley face or a star in the chat box if you have someone like that. Do you have someone who reliably makes you feel better just by being in the room with them? I wonder how we can increase those smiles. Oh, they're coming in now. Excellent, excellent, excellent. So now that we've mapped all five tanks, I want to leave you with the two reasons this matters. And one is immediate, and one is the long game. So time is finite. Energy can be more abundant if we're intentional. There are two reasons to lean into understanding your energy tanks. They speak to different motivations in this room. The first is immediate. You have a high stakes encounter coming. Maybe it's this week, maybe it's right after this session. Everything you learned today is deployable right now. The three breath meditation can take you as little as 10 seconds. Use it before your next call. The movement break takes 5 minutes. Take a break between your next two meetings. The compass word you just named in the chat, recall it. Recall your values. Recall how you want to show up before you walk into the room. It will change the way you arrive. These are not incremental improvements, they're neurochemical interventions. The difference between arriving regulated and arriving depleted is measurable both by you and by the people who experience you. Now, the second reason is the long game. The corporate athlete research, which I mentioned at the beginning of our time together, makes this argument eloquently. The professionals who sustain peak performance over decades are not the ones who push through the hardest. They are the ones who learned earlier rather than later that performance requires recovery, that the instrument requires maintenance, that you cannot give from empty. You are not preparing for one interview or one negotiation. You have the opportunity to build an operating system that sustains you across your career and way beyond. And the people who do that work, who develop the self-awareness, the practices, and the community to sustain it, show up differently. Not louder, but differently. So I'm curious, what tank surprised you most today? The one that you didn't realize was running low. Would you please drop that into the chat box? Which of your tanks? Physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, social. We've got a smattering here. We've got a smattering of many of them that is a beautiful starting place because knowledge is power. And this knowledge, this is the beginning of what we call your personal vitality plan. And it's the foundation of Spark 360. So if I may, I would love to take a minute to widen the lens on what was shared today. What you received over the last 40 minutes was a map of the territory. Spark 360 gives you the full toolkit, the science behind each tank, a personal vitality plan that is yours to keep, and a community to practice alongside. Spark 360 is 6 sessions, cohort-based, grounded in neuroscience. And it's not a workshop, it's not a course, it's a cohort, which means you do this work with people navigating similar high-stakes seasons of their lives and their works as well. The social baseline theory we just discussed is not incidental to the design, it is the design. Graduates of Spark 360, Deborah Nash being one of them, are invited to join the Driven Community Lab, where the vitality practice becomes a way of working, a wow, not just a session you attend. The people who do this work don't just feel better in high stakes situations. They show up differently in their jobs, in their leadership, in their relationships, not because they grind harder, but because they understand their human operating systems. And if this resonates, I'm putting into the chat box a link for a Spark Insight conversation, 30-minute call with me, and it will spark insight about you, your energy, and what Spark 360 could provide for you. It will be time well spent. And before I pass it over to Christy once more, I do want to share a couple of gifts with you. The first being, and now here I'm multitasking because I'm putting a couple of links into the chat box. 50 ways to ignite your energy. So you've just learned about your 5 energy tanks. 50 ways to ignite your vitality. It are 10 practical science-grounded strategies for each of your 5 tanks, not theory, but things to do starting today. Please download that link if it speaks to you and start today. And if you want a baseline about your personal vitality, your personal energy based on what you've heard today, that second link will is to an audit. Take the audit and you will get a sense of where you can begin. So before I turn it over to Christy, which tank will you commit to tending to next week? Not necessarily which one is the most depleted one, but which one will make the biggest change for all 5? What will you be paying attention to starting next week? We've got some social, we've got some mental, we've got some spiritual. And this is wonderful. And if we walk out of here with the intention to attend to one of these, energy goes to where energy goes to where intention and attention flow. So thank you all for your attention, for sharing your intentions with me. And now I will pass the mic back to Christy.
Deborah, thank you. This was really interesting, and I'm really appreciative that you sent over the deck so that we can refer to it. And yeah, I'm going to take the assessment. Um, there's one question from earlier, and folks, if you have additional questions, please put them in. But Kenny asked, and this is a great question. When you have to-dos and you have to switch tasks, how do you effectively park them, knowing that you have to go back to them?
Yeah, that is a good question. I wish I could see Kenny. I can. Oh, hi, Kenny. Thanks for the question. What I do is at the end of my sprint, I call these Pomodoro times a sprint. I will make a mark or a note of what I need to pick up with next, which is why before I take a break, I like to open up a file for whatever I'm working on next. So it could be a sentence at the end of a document. It could be a sentence in your calendar if you block your calendar for certain types of work. But a note is enough to jog your brain. And the other thing that I'd like to make clear with this Pomodoro technique and how we've built on it is just because we're working on something for, you know, 30 minutes with the timer, with the intention, with the break, doesn't mean that you don't go back to it after the 30 minutes to continue with that project. It is the importance of breaks and how we have been trained to push through and not to let our brain refresh. Kenny, does that answer your question? I think that
Yes,
I saw.
thank you. Sorry about that. I was on mute. Yes.
Perfect.
Thanks very much.
Good, good. And Jean asks, how do we manage these energies in the increasingly loud world? I mean, so many things take our attention, right?
Yes, so many things do. And what I love about the corporate athlete framework that Lair and Schwartz they presented this 25 years ago, the corporate athlete. Refreshing does not take a long time. Refreshing can be 2 minutes. And as long as we schedule some downtime, either an hour at night, a half a day during the weekend, these 2-minute refresh breaks can be a lot. So I'd like to add two real quick things. The first is mental energy is the most finite, it drains the most quickly and it replenishes the most quickly. During a 2-minute break, if you go out to a window and look out at the horizon for 30 seconds, that will refresh your mental energy and it will help you with all of your energy. Because I don't know about you, but I was not programmed for this little computer screen. By staring out of the window, it refreshes your brain, it refreshes your eyes. So that's an idea of a quick refresh. The second thing is a 20-minute break in the middle of your day with a timer to either meditate or read a pleasure book or take a walk in the garden. Those are ideas of how we can refresh quickly, as long as we don't expect to be in fifth gear for 365 days. We need, corporate athletes, after they have the big match, after the World Cup is finished, those athletes are going to refresh. They're going to take some time off to let their bodies, their minds, their emotions come back to equilibrium. If we can look at our heavy workload, like professional athletes, it doesn't take a long time between, what is it? The hydration breaks. It doesn't take a long time to hydrate during the game. And then after the games, they get to refresh. Does that answer the question? Oh, Bill
Yes,
and Jean,
thank you. Thank you.
great.
Good. So, a couple things, and we don't have any other questions in the chat right now, but I thought it was interesting, Van Gogh's comment, little emotions are the captains of our lives.
We obey
It's,
them without realizing it. We obey them without
yeah.
realizing it. Yes.
And when you think about it, it's like, okay, if that's the case, then as people are preparing for an interview or as they're preparing for their day of job search, right? It's like there's going to be a pull. And so, shifting using the breath technique, is that the most effective way?
Well, I think of it as the most, I think of it as the most effective way for me. Because of that second breath, because when I ask myself during the second breath, what am I feeling right now? So often I can identify I'm feeling impatient, I'm feeling irritated. And when I label it, it dissipates. Emotions only last for 90 seconds. Anything after that is residual. So if I can label that emotion, I can park it and I can be fully here with you all, even though right before this session, I spilled coffee all over my desk. Okay, that was irritation. That was not graceful. I could park it and be here with you because I actually labeled it.
Oh, good. Okay. So, and that makes sense. So Arindam asks, how do you go from the lowest rung on the ladder to of the emotional tank to the higher level? Is it the breath technique?
Well, the breath technique is certainly one that identifies where you're at. Curiosity is the magic tool. So if I'm feeling impatient, if I'm feeling defensive, to ask myself why. And the second thing that we can do is appreciation. That word itself, it brings us to the higher level of the mood elevator. I appreciate that I am feeling irritated right now, and I have every right to be, and it's okay. So appreciation, I really appreciate the fact that I am a little uncomfortable right now, but I'm still smiling and I'm getting through it. Like to not bury emotions, I think is that was the greatest shift for me when I was suffering from panic attacks. The greatest shift was feel the emotions. Like the kids these days say, feel the feels. There's something to that.
It's interesting, and so acknowledging it is, just simply acknowledging it is effective. And
But doesn't that lead to even further spiraling down, let's say, because you start thinking more about, you know, I'm unhappy or I'm depressed or whatever, and it just keeps spiraling down.
Well,
No?
no, it doesn't. It gives you information. So, spiraling down is when we don't acknowledge what's happening. As I mentioned before, emotions last for 90 seconds. Anything afterwards is us not closing a stress cycle. So, the stressor may be gone, but the stress still lives. So, the way to stop going down that spiral, which I totally understand, is meditating, exercising, have a conversation with a dear friend. It is attending to filling your energy tanks. And once you can ground in something like a true connection or a gratitude moment or humor, a good laugh, that will help you realign and rebalance.
Deborah, this is wonderful information. What's really interesting is one of the publications that I got this morning, that I get regularly, talked about um, residual attention. And it's fascinating. There's so much research coming out with neuroscience right now. And there's, way more, I think, control that we have that I don't think that we ever really thought we had. And, we're just a victim of our own thoughts, right? Or our own emotions.
Well, may I offer a reframe? Because
Yeah, please.
a victim is a word that is an automatic negative thought. We live by ants, the shoulds, the need tos, the have tos. We are not victims. We have just uncovered our agency. We have agency to keep those energy tanks fuller. We have the agency to recognize when we are stressed. We have the agency to practice gratitude. We have the agency to prepare ourselves mentally and emotionally before a meeting, which is why I'm a neurochemist, a neuroscience nerd, because it gives us agency and choice. And with that, we can live with fuller vitality.
I love it. I think this is fantastic. I really hope that you come back, Deborah, and we're going to invite you back. I promise you. And hopefully you'll make yourself available. This is really, really wonderful information, and I think we all gleaned something from it. And so we're sending out the deck, and Deborah, thank you so, so much. Really, really appreciate your time and attention and information. It was well prepared and fantastic. I think everyone's clicking on the links right now. So thank you, thank you, thank you. You all, it's been a pleasure to be with you. Thank you for being in community. You're filling up my social tank, that's for sure. And I love it. So we'll see you next week. We have Luke, and he's going to talk about financial stuff, which, hey, helps keep us grounded in a different way. So, Deborah, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Really, really appreciate it. And you all have a wonderful weekend. Stay safe. I heard from Russ that there's going to be some fireworks shows that were canceled previously that are going to be brought back. So woohoo! It's a shame that so many fireworks shows were canceled because of the heat. But hopefully you're staying cool. We're heating up a
Postponed.
bit here in SoCal, and but thank you all. Enjoy the weekend. See you soon.